welcome everybody. My name's Rebecca Gambles and I'm an animal healer and communicator. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about my journey with communicating with animals and the kind of things that animals say to me and how our animals play a part in our healing journey in our lives. So I wanted to run this event because I do offer personal sessions for people. So I do 90-minute sessions where people send me a photograph of their animal or I go to visit them in person and we do a full session healing for the animal, for the person, for the family members. Sometimes I'm doing spirit clearings in the house, on the property, but not everybody can afford to invest in a full session with me. So I actually thought I'd create this event so people can hear a little bit about what I do. And then if they wanted, they could have a short reading with me with their animal. So they could just ask one question and then whatever's required for the healing, that can take place today as well. So I'm going to talk about the animal communication at the beginning of the session, and then I'm going to do the questions at the end. So with regards to my journey with animal communication, I feel like I've been telepathically communicating with animals my whole life. As a child, I was naturally talking to my rabbit, to other animals in my life, and I just thought everybody was doing that. So I didn't really think that it was strange. But then as I got older, I realized not everybody's doing this, and I started to shut my gifts down. And then it wasn't until I went traveling at 28 and I quit all my jobs and I was traveling the world and I'd let go of all the responsibilities of working that all my psychic gifts awakened again, including my animal communication. So yeah, when I'm telepathically communicating with animals, I can either do it in person or through a photograph. So if the animal's in front of me, then I'm connecting in with their eyes and I'm asking their permission. Do you give me permission to communicate with you right now? Obviously, just because I can talk to them doesn't mean they want to. I met a cat at a retreat once and I was like, hi, would you like to have a conversation with me? And the cat was like, no, I'm way too busy. It's like, okay. The cat was like busy, like scanning the retreat center for energies that it needed to clear. That's the only time an animal said to me no, actually. It was like, no, I'm far too busy. It did talk to me later. But yeah, so I asked their permission. Are you willing to communicate with me? And if they're in person, then I find that they kind of, they'll make a gesture, like they'll walk towards me or they'll look at me or give me some kind of signal of like, yes, I'd like to communicate. If it's in a photograph, I ask for a photograph of the animal facing the camera, looking at the camera so that I can look into the eyes. And then I'm asking, do you give your permission? And the animal, the energy almost kind of comes out the photograph of me of like, yes, I would like to talk to you. And so from there, I'm looking through the eyes and I'm connecting energetically on all levels. So I'm extending my energy body to surround the animal, connecting on all levels with the animal. And then I'm communicating telepathically, which means I'm receiving images, words, feelings, all different things, just kind of a knowing from the animal to me. So often I'm receiving pictures from them and I'm sending pictures to them, but it is kind of a jumble of everything and it all comes all at once. So then I have to kind of translate it and I will feel like how they're feeling in their body. So if they're feeling happy, if they're feeling sad. So people book sessions for different reasons. It might be their animal has a behavioral issue. It might be that they're experiencing a physical pain. They could be, doing something unusual like urinating in the house over and over again. So people will contact me to find out what is going on with their animal. And it's very interesting because I'll start a session, whether it's in person or online, and the person will tell me, this is what's wrong with my animal, or this is what's happening with my animal. And then I'll talk to the animal and they'll say, this is what's happening with my human. So the human perceives that the animal has got something that needs fixing, but the animal often perceives that the human has something that needs resolving. So it works both ways. And often sometimes there is nothing wrong with the animal, as in, I mean, there isn't anything wrong with the animal, but you know what I mean? They don't have the problem. I could be called out to an animal that's anxious, for example. So I remember once getting called out to an extremely anxious dog. And the woman said, my dog is so anxious, I haven't been able to leave the house without her for 4 years. That's a long time not to be able to leave your house without your dog. And so she booked the session for me, and often with animals, I'll flow angelic Reiki to them. They absolutely love angelic Reiki. Again, I can do this in person or through the photo. I'm connecting with them on all levels and flowing healing energy to them. And often they'll just lie down, they'll fall asleep straight away. And then when it's finished, they'll kind of get up and stretch and shake to say, yeah, I'm finished now. So with this particular dog, you know, I said, I'm going to give you some angelic Reiki because it was extremely anxious. And the dog just paced the room, wouldn't lie down. And I was really confused. This was like earlier on in my career as an animal communicator. And I said, why won't you receive the angelic Reiki? And the dog just looked at me and said, there's nothing wrong with me. It's my owner. And I use the word owner lightly because obviously we don't own our animals. I like to say human companion. And she said, it's the lady that needs the healing. She's anxious. So I then had to go and ask the lady if she was willing to have the dog in the room with her while I did the healing. I didn't tell her what the dog had said. And the dog went and sat right in front of her. And I started channeling angelic Reiki across the room to the dog. And then straight away, the dog just got up, left the room and went and laid down in its basket. And so the woman was very confused. You know, she said, well, how, you know, my animal's left, how are you doing the healing? And so I said, actually, the animal's telling me you're the one with the anxiety. And then she admitted, yes, I do have extreme anxiety. I've had it since I was 4. So actually the healing was for her. And so what can happen is you've got a human person in the house and you've got an animal. Now, whatever's going on in that person, the animal feels it. Okay. So if the person's got anxiety, for example, the animal's going to go, oh, I can help you here. I'm going to take some of that anxiety from you, but then it's going to mirror it back to you. So then you go, oh, I've got an anxious dog, but actually that anxiety might be yours or somebody else in the family. And what I find is our animals usually have soul contracts with one particular person in the family. So they love everybody, but often they've reincarnated for one person. So it could be a child or it could be anybody, but they've usually got a specific contract. I'm here to help this person. So our animals don't come into our life by accident. You might think it's an accident, or we found a kitten in the hedge, or I went to the cattery, I had no intention of getting a cat, but it's not accidental. You see your animal, you look them in the eyes and you go, I know that's my animal. You know, you might not have intended of getting an animal and you go to the SPCA or whatever, and next thing you know, you're coming home with a dog. It's not a coincidence. We have soul contracts with our animals that they have agreed to come in at specific points in our lives, often to help us with things. So it might be, oh, I know you're going to go through a divorce at this age, or you're going to experience a death in the family and you're going to need some support. So I'm going to come in right before that happens and I'm going to help you through that. And then I'm going to be there to console you through that period. I actually had a cat that did that. It came in right before my relationship ended, and then she was there to support me through that breakup. So they come in often with a specific role. Okay, so like I say, it could be a support role. If you're going through something difficult, they're like, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to help you and support you. And again, it could be with a child. So a child could be being bullied, and maybe, and this has happened to me, nobody in the family knows the child's being bullied, but the cat knows, because the cat goes and sits in the room with the child when they come home from school, and the cat knows. So I've had cats tell me this teenage girl is being bullied, but nobody knows. And so the cat has given the message through me to the mother. So she then knows that the girl is being bullied. So they know what's going on and they know who needs support. And cats in particular, I know I'm talking about cats a lot, but they're very powerful healers, and they will often lie on the area of your body that requires healing. So like for me, when I went through my breakup, they laid on my heart, and my cat was like taking the grief from my heart, and then she would go and lie on the floor and release it to the earth. So they're very powerful transmuters, cats. Dogs are also very healing, but you know, the big ones, it's probably a bit harder for them to sit on your chest to release healing, release energy from you. So yeah. So they can come in as a support role, but they can also come in and challenge you as well. So I met a horse once that was extremely naughty, and I said, and it belonged to a 13-year-old girl, and the mother said, can you please sort this naughty horse out? And so I'd actually gone to communicate with 3 horses in this field. I ended up communicating with 12 horses. It was one of the most amazing sessions I've ever done, because when I got there, all the horses just started lining up as if they knew I was there to talk to them, and each one just came in when it was their turn, and I talked to 12 horses in like 2.5 hours. It was amazing. It was supposed to be an 1.5-hour session. But the animals had other ideas. But yeah, this particular horse was very naughty. And so I said, why are you behaving this way? And the horse said, because the 13-year-old girl is going to be an expert with horses when she's older. And I am here to teach her how to manage horses by behaving in this way. So it said, I'm not going to change my behavior, because if I did, she wouldn't become the expert that she's destined to be in the future. So sometimes the behavior doesn't serve us, or we feel like, oh, I don't like that my animal's doing that, but it's actually doing that to help you. But you don't understand why. Does that make sense? No one can answer me, so I'm just talking to myself. So we also reincarnate with our animals over and over again. So I work as a past life regressionist as well. So I've done hundreds and probably thousands of past life regressions. And, initially I was recognizing that all family members were showing up in different roles. So, your mum might be your baby in the next life, and your sister might be your boyfriend or whatever. We're all switching around, learning different lessons from each other. But as I was started to communicate with animals, I realized that they also are involved in that dynamic as well. So originally, I thought that animals always reincarnated as animals and people always reincarnated as people. But what I found through my work is that animals also reincarnate as humans. So it's not, and we also reincarnate as animals. So it's not like a linear process of like we're evolving from an animal to a human. We're all switching. So your cat in this life could have been your boyfriend in another life. Your dog in this life could have been your baby, for example. And it's interesting because when I go to meet people with their animals, I can usually tell what that animal was to them straight away by the way they treat it. So, you meet people and they've got a dog and they've got it all dressed up with little booties and a little bonnet on, and they're like, oh, it's my baby. And that dog is playing the same role again of like, I'm going to be your baby again. And then, I've met single women who go, oh, I don't need a partner because I've got my cat, and the cat is holding the partner role. And then they say, or I meet people and they say, I can't find a partner. But interestingly, there's an animal in the role of partner. And sometimes I have to say to the animal, you're not the partner. You may have been the partner before in another life, but you need to step out of that space. The universe fills voids. So if the animal is in the partner space, you're not going to call the partner in. So it's interesting how the animals can kind of hold that energy as well. So what I find is sometimes when people say, oh, my animal's behaving this way, I can say to the animal, well, why are you doing that? And sometimes they are trying to let the owner know of a past life. So they're trying to say, hey, do you remember when this happened before? So something's played out before, you've been in a situation before, and the animal is reminding you so that you can access the memories, so you can receive the healing of releasing the past life. I'll give you an example, and this is the example that's coming in. I went to an animal communication talk at a festival. It wasn't my talk. And I was just there watching, and a lady put her hand up and said, I have a cat that won't eat unless it dances for its food. So she said, I feed it and it won't eat until it's got on its hind legs and does this little dance, which I thought was hilarious. And the lady, who was also an animal communicator, she didn't really know how to answer the question of why the cat was doing that. And so I immediately saw that there was a past life between the cat and the person whose cat it was. And so I just said to the universe, if you want me to give the woman the message, just bring her to me. anyway, a few days later, I ran into her at the festival and I said, are you open to me sharing why your cat dances for its food? And she said, yeah. And I said, you've had a past life where you were a pharaoh and your cat was like a woman that would come and dance for you in order to receive food from you. So she was like an entertainer and she would dance for you and then you would feed her. So the cat was still carrying the energy of the past life, but interestingly, the healing was for the woman. So the woman was carrying this pharaoh energy, which was actually holding her back because, I mean, I can't remember the specifics of it, but the healing that was required was for the woman. So the cat was just going, hey, do you remember that we played this dynamic out before? And then it wasn't until I actually shared the past life with her and I was able to clear the energy of it for her that behavior could change. Now, I mean, a cat dancing for its food is not really that big a problem. And, you know, it's quite entertaining. It probably makes some good YouTube clips or something. But sometimes animals behave in other ways that aren't as good for us, which are also connected to past lives. So it is good in that instance to be able to go in, find out what happened before, and then once I've accessed the past life, I then clear all karma that's arising. So any negative karma arising between the animal, the person, maybe there's other family members there, clear all of the karma so that all the relationships move forward. And then I clear the past life energy from the person. So I ask that it's like an aspect of them. I ask it to go into the light, to clear all the fears, emotions, and beliefs and any weakness in the body connected to the past life. So I ask the animal to release it and I ask the human to release it. So both of them receive healing. And also, often when I'm doing sessions, I'm usually doing a healing for about 5 people. Usually there's an animal, the main person who's booked the session, but there might be children involved or parents or partners. So usually the healing could be roughly for about 5 to 7 people, clearing the past life so that everybody can let it go. And that allows the dynamics to change. And the animal can literally change straight away. Sometimes it takes a few days. It can take about 3 days sometimes when you're clearing past lives because it's kind of coming out of the energy field, but sometimes it's immediate. And it is amazing when I do the sessions and then people do give me feedback and say, oh my God, you know, the animals changed already. I did a healing not that long ago for a cat and a dog that refused to be in the same room together. And they just didn't get on. And I think they'd lived together for like 15 years. And at the end of the session, I was driving home and the woman sent me a photograph of the dog and the cat sat together in the same room. And she's like, you're not going to believe it, that they're already sat together. So yeah, I love it when that happens, when the animal shifts straight away. And with regards to the past life, it's like once you've let go of that energy, they don't need to keep reminding you because it's gone. So you received the healing, they received the healing, it's been released, so then the behavior can change. And this also goes for if the reminder is a physical problem. So the animal could also have a physical problem that's connected to a past life. So when you release that, the physical disease or injury can also heal. So it's very powerful to look at past lives for yourself and for your animals as well. The other thing that animals often talk to me about is ghosts. So, you know, there's ghosts, I also call them entities. They're everywhere, okay? I mean, we get a lot of entities in supermarkets, bars and clubs, doctors' surgeries, dentists, hospitals. There's so many there. Usually because there's a lot of energy there. So when people are going out drinking or taking drugs, you know, people who don't have bodies can go and attach to people who are doing those things and they can get energized and they can re-experience those things by connecting to the person that's doing it. Okay. Also, for obvious reasons, they're in hospitals because maybe they died there, or they can be in buildings if they died there and they don't realize they've passed over. Now, if you live in a house where there's a ghost, whether that ghost was the previous owner of the house, or they just came home with you one day from the supermarket because they liked your energy, whatever reason, that does happen sometimes. The animal can see the spirit. And they know there's someone in the house that's not meant to be in the house. That person doesn't belong to my pack. That's not my family member. And so the animal can start to act strange. The most common sign that you have a ghost in your house is the animal will start urinating or defecating in a particular place because they are saying there is something here that needs cleaning. So it actually needs cleaning energetically, but obviously every time they wee and poo there, you're having to get the chemicals out and clean it with that. But that's not actually what's required. And this is not in every case with the urination, obviously, but I would say probably 95% of the cases of what I'm dealing with, it's because there's a spirit in the house. So the animal's saying there's an unwanted energy here that needs to go. So if that's the case, I'll speak to the animal and ask them who's there. And they'll, they usually tell me there's a man in the house, there's a woman in the house, it's not meant to be here. And then because I'm also a psychic medium, I will tune into the spirit and say, hey, what are you doing here? Like, do you think this is your house? Are you connected to someone that lives in this house? And then that spirit will tell me, oh yeah, I used to live here, or I'm looking for my wife, or, I like the energy of the child and I came home from school with them. Whatever the reason is, I will then guide that spirit into the light. So I'll say, hey, your life is over with. You have actually passed over, if they don't know, and I will guide them to leave the property. Yeah. Sometimes if it's a family member, sometimes there's healing required before the person who is still alive can let go of the person who's passed over, or vice versa. But then I will clear the spirit from the house and I'll clean the area energetically where the animal has been urinating or defecating. And I usually find pretty much straight away the animal will stop that behavior. Yeah, and I've been to houses where like they're urinating everywhere and there has been several spirits in the house, and then I've cleared the whole house of the spirits, because there can be more than one as well, and then the animals just stop urinating straight away. So that's the number one thing I would say when animals are doing that in the house. The other thing I will tell you is entities or ghosts can attach to us. I am actually planning on doing an entity release workshop probably next week, and I will teach people how to clear entities from themselves and from buildings. They can attach to you. Now, if you are fully grounded in your body, fully taking up space, shining your light, absolutely like empowered, it's very unlikely they're going to attach to you because your energy is just radiating light. It's going to be very hard for them to attach to you. If you're not grounded, so, grounded, being in your body, fully present here, showing up now. If you're not fully grounded, taking up space, and that could be for a multitude of reasons. Sometimes we feel like, oh, I don't really want to be here. Life's hard. I wish I was back where I came from. It was better there, whatever reason. Definitely had that myself. It's like there's a vacancy sign on your forehead saying, this person's not fully taking up the body, so there's space here. So an entity can come and attach to you, and then they can influence your emotions, your physical body, and your habits. So they can also start making you feel like, oh, I really want a beer, even though you don't drink beer, because they're giving you that feeling. So if you get an entity attachment, the animal knows. So normally there's one entity in the body, which is you. But if you get an entity attachment, then, could be 2 entities or 3 or 4, and the more we do things that weaken our energy field, the more easier it is for entities to attach to us. So alcohol is a really good one for helping entities to attach to us because it weakens our energy field, and also drugs do as well. So it makes it easier for entities to connect to us. So if you have an entity attachment, the animal might start acting strange with you because it's like, you're not my person. So basically, if there's 2 entities in the body, one of them's you and the other one's someone who jumped in or a family member or whatever, it's almost like there's 2 people trying to drive the vehicle and they'll keep switching places. So when it's you, the animal will respond to you in a way of like, oh yeah, you're my person. But when the other entity comes in and takes control, the animal will be like, well, who are you? You're not meant to be in the body. And so that animal will start acting strangely towards the person. So they might start growling. If it's a dog, they might be growling at the person like that. entity is not meant to be in my person's body. You know, cats, for example, might scratch you or whatever they might do. So they start responding differently to you because you're not being you, and they know you're not being you. So one of the things animals might say to me is, you need to do an entity clearing on my person so that I get just the person back who I'm meant to be with. The other thing that might happen is the animal might have an entity attachment. So sometimes animal entities jump into other animals' bodies. Now, this can particularly happen if, say you've lost a beloved dog, your dog's just died, and you get a new dog. The dog that's passed over goes, oh, I see an opportunity to carry on being with this family. I'm going to jump into this body with this dog. So then you've got two dogs in one body. I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but this is what happens. So you can have two entities in one body, but the old entity then affects the new animal. You know, if one animal died of a specific injury, then it can affect the new animal's body. So I'll give you an example. I did a reading for a racehorse, and this racehorse was fine. And then one day it suddenly got an injury, but it didn't injure itself. It started showing an injury that nothing had happened, and it started oozing from its back leg. And when I spoke to the horse said the injury is not mine. And what had happened is another racehorse had been injured in a race and died. And the entity of that horse had jumped into this horse's body. And so that injury then started to manifest in the horse that was alive, even though it hadn't injured itself. And so the vets were completely taken aback by this injury because they couldn't understand why the animal was just suddenly oozing from this place on its body. And the woman who owned the horse spent 2 or 3 months with the chiropractors, vets, everyone trying to work out what happened to the horse, why it was limping and suddenly displaying this injury. And when I spoke to the horse, it said, I have an entity attachment. And so I cleared the entity. I told the racehorse that had jumped in, look, you've died. You need to leave. This is not your body. You're affecting this body. And so I released the racehorse that had died so that it was just the animal in the body, and then the injury healed. So it went pretty much straight away because that injury didn't belong to the horse. So entity attachments can affect animals, and they can also affect us. So that also works if Grandma Joan hops into your body and she had pneumonia, you can suddenly start experiencing problems in your lungs, for example. So entities can affect our physical bodies and the physical bodies of animals. So yeah, animals can let me know if there's entity attachments to them or to people. And they can also let me know if there's entities, also known as ghosts, in your house as well. So that's a lot of the work that I do as well. Does anyone have any questions so far? Because I'm realized I've just shared a lot. So if you do, just write any questions in the chat. So it's not just domestic animals that I talk to. I also talk to wild animals. I also talk to insects. Yeah, everything. If I'm talking to a domestic animal, I'm talking to one animal. I'm tuning in through their eyes, through the body, connecting with that animal. If I'm talking to a wild animal, so if I'm talking to the dolphins, for example, if I'm talking to the consciousness of the dolphins, then I wouldn't focus on one dolphin. I would focus on the whole collective of the dolphins, maybe in that area that I'm going to. And I would imagine that all of those dolphins kind of become one big dolphin in my mind. And I'm talking to the big dolphin, which represents the consciousness of all the dolphins. And so that's how I communicate with any kind of wild animals. I imagine the whole collective becomes one big animal, and I'm talking just to that one, which represents the collective. I'll give you an example. I used to date a guy, a Kiwi guy, and he was a hunter. I didn't know this when we first got together, but after 6 months, he said, hey, I'm going pig hunting. And I remember thinking, this is not going to work. I can't date a hunter. Anyway, he said one day, I'm going hunting. And I said, right, where are you going? And he said, oh, I'm going to such a location. And I said, how many people are going? And he said, me and 3 guys. And I said, right, what time will you be there? So he said, such a time. So I said, okay, great. So when he left the house, I tuned into that specific location and said, I'm talking to all the pigs in this location. So I imagined all the pigs became one pig. And I said, just to let you know, there's 4 guys coming with guns or whatever they had, knives or guns. And I said, and they're going to kill you. So if you're not ready to die, you need to hide. So anyway, my partner came home a few hours later and I said, how was your trip? And he said, you know what? It was really weird. He said, normally there's pigs everywhere. He said, we didn't see a single pig. So I did admit to him that I'd told them all to hide. But it just goes to show the power of communicating with the collective of the animal. Yeah. So that works with wild animals that are kind of as a herd to actually just communicate with all of them together. And that also works with insects. So for example, my friend, I went to a friend's house once and she had a colony of ants in her bathroom and she said, you know, can't seem to get rid of these ants. And I'd never actually communicated with insects at this point, but I thought I'll give it a go. So I just imagined all the ants became one big ant. And I said, you know, I'm just going to communicate with you now. And I gave them the image. So like I say, animals really communicate well with images. So I gave them the image. If you stay in this bathroom, you're all going to die. Because I said to her, what are you going to do? She said, I'm going to spray them with one of those spray things. So I gave them an image of everyone going up in flames and everyone was crying and screaming and it was a massive disaster if they stay there. And I said to her, is there somewhere that you're happy for them to live? And she said, yeah, they can live in the compost. So I said, where's the compost? So she said, oh, if they go out the window, down the wall, across the path, they'll find the compost. So I sent the ants an image of the route, so going out the window, down the wall. And I said, if you go there, I gave them an image of everyone was celebrating and having a great time living in the compost bin together. And I had my eyes closed while I was communicating with the ants. And while I was doing it, my friend said, oh my God. And I opened my eyes and the ants had already started filing out in the direction that I told them. So it's no good saying to an animal or an insect, you can't be here. If you've got mice in your house, it's no good saying you can't be here because they want to know, well, where can I be? They need an alternative. So if you're going to tell an animal it can't do something, you need to tell it what it can do. Okay. So say, for example, some animals identify with having a job. This is my job. You know, animals that bark a lot, dogs that bark a lot, for example. Oh, this is my job. I'm a guard dog. Well, I don't want you to be a guard dog. Okay, well, what do you want me to be then? I need another job. So if you're going to take away a job, you need to give them a new job because they like to know that they've got a role with you. They like to, just like we like to feel important, they like to feel important. So an animal's coming to mind, a dog that I spoke to, and it was doing something. I can't remember what it was now. I think it was chasing chickens on the farm. And I asked it why, and it said, oh, I'm so bored. And so, you know, I said to the owner, your dog wants a job. And she said, oh, I just want it to be a cuddle dog, you know, just tell it to be a cuddle dog. So I told the dog, oh, you know, they just want you to give cuddles. And the dog just went, oh, I'm far too intelligent for that. I want a better job than that. And I said, okay, well, what job do you want? And it said, I want to do dog obedience training. And I want the 13-year-old daughter to take me obedience training because she's going to become an expert in dogs when she's older. So I said, okay, I'll mention it to your owner. And so I said to the mother, like, this is what the dog wants. And the daughter was in the room as well. And she overheard and she was like, yeah, I want to take a training. And so it turns out the dog and the daughter actually had a soul contract that they were going to do that together, that she was going to train the dog. But yeah, obviously they were trying to give the dog the job of cuddling, and the dog was not happy with that job. I love that a cat just walked across Lee's screen. So yeah, animals like to know their purpose as well. And sometimes they can get confused about what that purpose is. So I had a friend who had a dog who was very aggressive to anyone that came to the house, and it was a German Shepherd, and people would come to the gate and it would like bark and try and bite them. And so she said to me, can you come round and speak to our dog? So I went round and she said, just to let you know, we're going to lock him in the kitchen and we're going to let him out, and he's probably going to jump all over you, go absolutely crazy. It's going to be very hard for you to talk to him because he's absolutely insane. So I said, okay, I'll prepare myself. So I sat down because I know that animals never act the way people tell me they're going to act around me. So I sat down, she let the dog out of the kitchen, and the dog just walked in, sat straight in front of me, just sat down, looked at me as if it was like, yeah, I'm ready for my session. Totally knew why I was there. And I said to the dog, why are you behaving this way? Why are you attacking people that come to the gate? And the dog said, oh, it's my job. And I said, what's your job? And it said, I'm a guard dog. And I said, who told you that? And so the dog showed me a memory of being a puppy. And it showed me a memory of when it was a puppy, there was a man and it was punching him in the face and saying, bite me, bite me. And it was testing the dogs. Obviously, they were trying to train aggressive guard dogs. And so the guy was trying to get the dog to bite. And the dog didn't. And so the guy said, this dog is a rubbish guard dog. We're going to give it away. And so in that moment, the dog kind of had the sense of, I failed at being a guard dog. And so when it got the new owners who didn't want him to be a guard dog, he was like, I'm not going to fail this time. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to do the job that I'm meant to be doing. And so he was trying to be aggressive. And this is one of the, I've had so many sessions where I wish I'd actually got it on camera. I wish somebody had been following me with a video, but this one in particular was so good because I was telepathically communicating with the animal. So the owners had no idea what I was saying because I was saying it all in my head. But I just said to the dog, but these people don't want you to be a guard dog. And the dog just went, like, look, it was like Scooby-Doo, just totally like, what? And I said, they just want you to be a pet dog. And the dog just immediately like collapsed on the floor and just went to sleep, just started sleeping. And the owners were like, what did you say to our dog? He never sleeps. Like he's so anxious. He's so like hyper. And I said, I just gave him permission to relax and be a pet dog. And his behavior just changed like that. So it's important to acknowledge, what job did I give my animal? What have I told them is their job? And does that serve you and the animal? Or is it time to actually let that go and be like, hey, you don't need to do that. You don't need to bark at the postman or whatever it is that your animal is doing. And I've talked a lot about dogs and cats, but I speak to all animals. So, I speak to rabbits and horses frequently as well, and birds and lots of different animals. But many people have cats and dogs. So those are, the most common animals that I'm talking to. So, yeah, that's kind of what I feel to share about my journey with animal communicating. Did anybody have any questions? So, I think anyone's got any questions? Oh, yeah. Do you ever have an animal that's having an issue with another animal and wants you to fix them? So wants to fix them or the other animal? The other animal? Yeah. Yes, I do have animals that have issues with other animals. So it's quite common, actually. Sometimes, people have multiple animals in the house, and sometimes there's karmic connections between one animal and another animal. So they've known each other in past lives. Maybe they've been brother and sister before, and they're used to fighting, and so they're still fighting now. Or there's jealousy, like you're mummy's boy and I want to be mummy's boy, or there can be different dynamics playing out. The past life connection's common when there's a problem between two animals. It can often be connected to past lives. But yeah, definitely animals have problems with other animals. Yeah. I've also had animals, they're just randomly popping in, that don't know they're animals. So I spoke to one sheep who thought it was a human. And this sheep was hilarious. It was breaking into the owner's house. They lived on like a farm. And it was breaking into the house, and they would find the sheep sitting on the settee on the couch. And they were like, why is the sheep coming in and sitting on the couch? And so, I asked the sheep, what are you doing? You're supposed to be in the field. And the sheep said, oh, no, I'm a human. I'm a member of this family. And I said, no, you're not. You're a sheep. And so I had to, it was connected to a past life where they'd been human, but I said, you can't continue coming sitting on the couch. Like, you need to be out in the field with the other sheep. And because the animal didn't feel like a sheep, it also didn't resonate with the other sheep. So I had to do some clearing around that sheep hanging out with the other sheep. But after the session, the lady did say that she returned to the field and did end up hanging out with the other sheep. So it's interesting sometimes when animals have such a strong association with a past life that they don't actually realize they're an animal in this life. And because our animals reincarnate, they can switch species as well. So you could have a cat that becomes a dog, or a dog that becomes a horse, or whatever. And I actually feel that my own animal in this life has reincarnated as a rabbit, then a dog, and then a cat. I actually feel that's the same soul that has stayed with me throughout my life and just kept coming in as a different animal. And interestingly, when they do that, they have this kind of similar personality traits. So being aware that our animals reincarnate over and over again in past lives, but also in this life. Okay. So when an animal passes away, it's very, very sad because we're so attached to that animal and we're so attached to that body. But the animal isn't worried because it's like, hey, I can come back. If you want me to come back, I'll come back. So just know that you could have the same animal throughout your life, the same soul that just keeps coming in a different body. And then you're like, oh, you're just like my other animal, because it is the other animal, just in a new body. And in this regard, the animal doesn't have an opinion of death. So when it comes to the end of the life, and that was another thing I was going to talk about with soul contracts, when the soul contract is complete, the animal's like, right, I'm good to go now. But, my cat died at 4, which is very young, but she told me, no, this is my exit point. This was agreed that I would be with you for these 3 years. This is my exit point, and now I'm going so that I can travel with you etherically. Now, of course, I was very attached to my cat and was very upset that she died, but in her opinion, it was perfect. And I hear this a lot from animals. They're like, this body is tired. I mean, not in her case, but this body is tired. It's old. I'm ready to get out of this body now, but I'm totally willing to come back into a new body as a kitten or a puppy. And so that animal, it's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just renewing the body. But obviously we get very attached to that particular body, of course. And sometimes it's hard to know that that animal can come back. So yeah, I've had animals and I've said, what's your name? And they've given me the name of their previous incarnation. And then I've asked the owner what the name is. And I said, oh, that's not the name they gave me. And they said, what name did they give you? And I'll share it. And they say, oh, that was the name of the animal I had that died. And I'm like, okay, well, it's the same soul that's come back again into this new body. And people say to me, well, how will I find them? How will I find them? Well, they're going to find you. Whether it's you just having a hit to go to a cattery or a kennels, or a friend offers you a kitten, or, an animal turns up in your driveway, whatever it is, that animal is going to find you because the soul contract's there. So you don't need to worry that you're not going to find them. You are going to find them. What I will say is, though, sometimes it doesn't benefit you for the same animal to reincarnate again and again and again consecutively. The reason for this is just like it probably wouldn't benefit you to date the same person in every lifetime over and over again and marry them, because you would never learn anything new. You'd be like, oh, I married this guy for 50 years and then we reincarnate. Oh, let's marry again, reincarnate. If eventually at some point you're going to say, I'm going to choose a different partner. It's the same with animals. We can have an animal that we love, and they can reincarnate with us. But at some point, a different soul might come in and say, hey, I need to teach you a lesson, a different lesson. So I'm going to come in now, and that other animal can come back later in life. But right now, that's not what you need. So, you know, sometimes if the animal's, not really bringing anything up, it's just more of a comfort blanket for you, maybe, then maybe you need another animal that's bringing a different energy. So they can reincarnate over and over again. They don't always, but it is a possibility. So yeah. And they don't have a strong opinion of death, because they know there is no such thing as death, because they can come straight back again. But what I will say is they do like their lives to be honored. So I went to see a horse once that was really playing up, and they said, why is this horse playing up? And I asked the horse, and it said, they're talking about shooting me in front of me. And I said, are you going to kill this horse? And she said, yeah, it's due to be put down. And I said, you know, the horse wasn't feeling honored. It said, I've worked for this woman for 25 years. I just want to feel honored. And so I asked the woman to do a ceremony with the horse where she shared everything that she was grateful for about the horse's service, about the life together, so that the horse could be honored before it passed. So animals do like, if you are going to put them to sleep, it is nice to have a little ceremony with them and just say, this is what I appreciated about you. This is my favorite memories with you. And now we're going to part ways. And I do find that animals are usually in acceptance of their time as well. They know it's their time. You don't need to feel guilty that you've chosen to put your animal to sleep. It knows that was coming, and it's ready to go.